Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Daily BizLink. Jane Cebrynski is back. In today's episode, we're talking about the power of what if. So, Jane, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. So let's start. What about a 10 moment?
Well, I can't help it. I mean, when you bring up these specific topics, I think about, what's going on in my personal life or what's recently happened. And my 10 moment of the week would be I thought about this what if situation. I was visiting a girlfriend back in the Midwest. She was talking about this publication that's, kind of local. It highlights local families and neat stories about them. And she's like, wouldn't it be really neat if, my fiance and I could be featured in this publication? What if? And I thought, well, I think I have the skill set and I think I could probably put together a pretty cool pitch. And let me tell you, Jane, we just found out that they were published in the November edition of this local publication. So that is my 10 moment.
I love that. Okay, see, this is, and we don't plan this. So I love Well, okay, so this what if for me has played a really big role in my life. There is a beautiful, there is Winnie the Pooh is one of my favorites. And there is a page out of one of books on Pooh that is Piglet and Pooh walking in the 100-acre woods, and they come under a tree. And Piglet says, Pooh, what if this branch fell on our head? And Pooh says, what if it doesn't? And that has stayed with me so many times in the fact that our brain, we've talked about how the brain is naturally wired for kind of negativity as a protective mechanism. And so we oftentimes are able to go down that what if rabbit hole, if you will, into a very dark space. And my challenge and the conversation is, okay, if we can go down into that dark space, just like Piglet, what if we could go into a positive space? So just as easily as your brain can take you down that rabbit hole, you have the power through what if to change it. And thoughts?
I mean, I tend to be on the side of optimism, right? Like I'm an optimistic, positive thought process individual. And so I do think that people have the ability, but some have that more of a natural tendency than others.
Well, when you think about that suffer from anxiety, for example, a lot of times it's the story that gets built up inside of our heads. And if we can create that story, then we can also create a more meaningful, positive story. And let me just show you, let me just share with you very quickly how this showed up in my personal life. My mom recently had surgery, and it was a very long surgery, and we didn't know how long it was going to take. And my father, being that it's in COVID, he hasn't even been able to see her. So not able to talk to her, not able to see her. He started going down the what if, and all he could think about was these really horrible things that could be happening. And so we just had a conversation between my brothers and I and him to say, Dad, what if? And then we just painted all kinds of other potential stories that could be just as true. What if the doctor started late? What if the machine that they were using a specialized machine? What if it wasn't available till later? What if mom's just in recovery and they haven't called you yet? There were so many other potential stories that could be just as true. So if you can be afraid that the branch is going to fall on your head, you can equally be optimistic that it's not.
So for those individuals that are struggling with shifting that mindset, do you have any specific tips or challenges for them?
Yeah, so first of all, it always goes back to awareness, right? And so that visual of Piglet and Pooh is very dynamic for me, because when I start to go down that path, I immediately think of story. I go, okay, I can paint a picture or develop a story that's that negative. What could be a very positive, optimistic? So let's just say, for example, somebody doesn't call you back and you start the what if. Oh my gosh, what if they're mad at me? What if they don't like me? Well, what if they drop their phone in the toilet and they've been at Verizon for 3 hours looking for a new phone? I mean, that could equally be true. And that really shifts our mindset, keeps us more emotionally managed, keeps us more optimistic, and really prevents us from going down a very dark hole that could produce a lot of anxiety and stress, which isn't healthy for us.
I agree. So I know this is something that I will continue to personally practice and implement within my personal life. So as we look to wrap up this conversation, Jane, is there anything else that you want to leave our audience with?
I really recommend that you paint a story. If you notice you're going down that road, right? Paint just funny, crazy, silly, beautiful of a story that could potentially be as well. Because after all, we don't know anyone's story, and that's a wonderful tool that we're always anchoring in. But then you can also practice the power of what if.
Awesome. All right, Jane. Well, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the Daily BizLink.
Thanks so much for having me, Lindsay.